is because they said there are no programs to directly address this issue. When in fact, I would like to bring up that there is currently a program called the YTC Youth Mentorship Program. Madam Speaker, what this program does, Madam Speaker, is take youths who were once deemed as radicals within society, takes them.
Ready? Okay, good morning. I want to welcome each of you, members of the Ministry, officials of the Ministry of Public Utilities, Water and Sewerage Authority. Are there members of the board here? From the
The only member from the board here this morning, Chairman, is myself, the Chairman of the board.
All right, okay. I want to welcome you then, and I also want to welcome the members in the public gallery, all the officials who are here from WASA to support, and of course members of the media who are critical in making available to the public what goes on here in the committee. The purpose of this meeting, and this is the 22nd meeting of the Public Accounts Committee of the 11th Parliament. The purpose of this meeting of the Public Accounts Committee is to examine the audited financial statements of the Water and Sewerage Authority of Trinidad and Tobago for the years 2008 to 2013. This committee is interested in hearing the challenges being faced by the key stakeholders of the Water and Sewerage Authority of Trinidad and Tobago in an attempt to determine some of the possible solutions to these challenges. The role of the committee, that is to say the Public Accounts Committee, is to help the Water and Sewerage Authority of Trinidad and Tobago improve its delivery of services in an efficient and effective economic manner. So on that basis, we will proceed. This meeting is being held in public, excuse me, and is being broadcast live on the Parliament's Channel 11 and Radio 105.5 FM, and also on the Parliament's YouTube channel ParlView. Viewers and listeners can send their own comments related to today's topic via email, which is parl101@ttparliament.org. They can send it on Facebook, facebook.com/ttparliament, or they can send it by Twitter @ttparliament. So what I will ask, first of all, is my members of the committee, some of you whom are new, and there are other members of the committee who will join us during the course of this proceedings. And I will ask the members of the committee to introduce themselves. My name, of course, is Bo Tiwari, Boindra Tiwari, and I'm chair of the committee and a member.
Good morning, I'm Ayana Webster-Roy, member.
Good morning, Taharko Obika, member.
Good morning, Adrian Leons, member.
Good morning, Melissa Ramkisoon, member.
Okay, and I should add that Mr. Obika is also vice chair of the committee. I would ask members present here from WASA if they would please introduce themselves and their designation, please.
Good morning, Chairman. My name is Romney Thomas. I'm the Chairman of the Board of Commissioners of WASA.
Ellis Burris, Chief Executive Officer for the Water and Sewage Authority.
I'm Dion Abdul, General Counsel and Corporate Secretary at WASA.
Sheldon Shepherd, Director of Operations, WASA.
Giselle Spence, I'm temporarily acting in the capacity of Director of Finance.
Alan Poon King, Acting Director, Customer Care.
Leanne Diaz, Director HR Acting.
Penelope Williams, Head of Internal Audit and Compliance.
Keith Mead, Acting Head of Water Resources Agency.
Denise Leasing Pereira, Director Programs and Change Management, Acting.
Alvin Brown, Head Logistics.
That's it?
We have some other members of the WASA management team, but they're seated in the public gallery.
Okay. Huh? Yeah, I didn't hear, are there any representatives of the Ministry of Public Utilities here? Would you please identify yourself? Yeah.
Sure. Good morning, Chair and members of the committee. I'm Gary Joseph, the Acting Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Public Utilities.
Okay.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Anika Sarah Farmer, Director Legal Services at the Ministry of Public Utilities.
Good morning, Arlene Johnson Lawrence, Senior Project Manager, Ministry of Public Utilities.
Good morning, Sarah Jade Govayo, Water Sector Specialist at the Ministry of Public Utilities.
Okay. Could you raise your hand? I didn't see that person. Okay. All right. Thanks. Okay, so who is going to make the opening statement on behalf of WASA?
I am, please.
So you will do it as chair?
Yes, please.
All right, please proceed.
Chairman and members of the committee, good morning. Thank you for inviting us to this 22nd meeting of the Public Accounts Committee. I would like to begin with a quote from the National Development Strategy to underscore the importance of the Water and Sewerage Authority to the everyday lives of the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago and all who step foot on these shores. I quote, "Public utility systems play a strategic role for human civilization, essential in economic and social development, whether they relate to water supply, sewage treatment, electricity and public lighting systems, or telecommunication services. In order to achieve our national vision, Trinidad and Tobago needs efficient, cost-effective, and reliable water and wastewater services, electricity, and telecommunication services, as these are enablers which determine the quality of life. Thus, in the short term, improving the management of these systems would augur well for the country's ability to succeed in diversification, production, expanding trade, coping with population growth, improving health, and reducing poverty. It is important for us at the authority to remember this. This current board assumed office in December of 2015, exactly 2 years ago. Since that time, we have done an assessment of the capacity of WASA to deliver on its mandate. In some instances, the authority has been up to the task. In others, we recognize our challenges and are aware that capacity building and re-engineering may need to be undertaken. We are committed to improving customer service and public engagement to ensure that the public receives the service they truly deserve. Our areas of focus will include the following: corporate governance, customer service excellence, debt management, and operational efficiency. We are confident that our initiatives will bear fruit, which will result in an authority that citizens can be satisfied with. WASA is committed to meeting this commitment. We are here in response to this Honorable Committee's invitation to examine the audited financial statements for the period financial year 2008 to 2013. Even though this period covers a period prior to the tenure of this board, the management team and I are here to assist this committee in its examination of these financial statements and will do so to the best of our collective ability in a forthright manner. I thank you for the opportunity to make this short statement and look forward to a beneficial working session this morning. I thank you.
All right, then. Thank you. Thank you very much, Chairman. The way we will proceed is that I will ask some general questions in the opening, and you can respond to those. And then each of the members of the Public Accounts Committee, starting on my right, will, and your left, will follow with questions of their own. We will do it round robin, and we'll ask you questions. And each member of the committee will get a chance to have other rounds of questions to ask. You will be given the fullness of time to answer your questions because we want to hear what you have to say. But we ask you please to be pointed to the questions that are asked so that we could be efficient in the use of time. So thank you very much again for coming, and we proceed. Could you outline for me, Chairman, the biggest challenges that you identify as facing WASA today? You can give us maybe 3, 4, the biggest challenges that you have.
We have some operational challenges, I think, in terms of the aging infrastructure that we have at WASA, aging pipelines, the pipeline network, so a lot of it needs to be replaced. And that flows into the next challenge, well, obviously a financial one. I don't think we have enough revenues coming into the authority to meet our operational needs. Those are essentially 2 major challenges that I can foresee right now.
Okay, so the big problems you identify are really aging infrastructure, and you can elaborate on that. And the other one would be the revenue challenge that you have, those being the dominant challenges.
Yes, Chairman.
Okay. What is your most significant risk factor?
In terms of what area are we looking at?
Well, you have a company, and all companies strive for profitability and sustainability. And you may have a number of challenges that you face, but what is the worst risk that you face as a corporation, as a company, as a statutory body, as an essential service that basically gives life and energy to the population?
Well, essentially, again, coming back to revenues, if we don't have sufficient revenues, we're not going to be able to provide the service that people require. The revenues that we generate essentially are used to provide chemicals to treat the water, to make sure that the water is pure enough to disseminate to the public. That in itself, we have to make sure that we have enough revenues to meet that need. The need to ensure that operationally we can deliver the water to the people in a timely as well as in a safe manner. And not to underscore the need for, we sometimes forget that we also Water and Sewerage Authority, so wastewater is a very essential part of our mandate as well. And we have to ensure that we are able to provide, to ensure that the sewage is treated in a timely fashion as well, to ensure that it's a safe, from a public health standpoint.
Okay, you in your initial statement, your opening statement, you talked about a national development strategy. And in identifying the aging infrastructure, including the pipelines, and the revenue issue as a major risk, so you have these things as current challenges that you face, and you have the revenue issue as a major risk. What is your plan to overcome these things? The aging infrastructure and the pipes, etc. I suspect that includes leaks, etc. And the revenue challenge that you face, which if you persist, cannot in fact guarantee you sustainability at all. What are your plans for these things?
Well, Chairman, we're heavily dependent on government subvention to meet our operational expenses. In terms of plans to meet those risks, we have to raise revenue. The number one way to raise revenue is to increase rates. And that's within the mandate of the Regulated Industries Commission, who have embarked upon a rate review for the Water and Sewerage Authority. So that is the first aspect that we obviously have to look at. Obviously, we have to try and reduce our expenditure in terms of trying to make ourselves a leaner, more profitable organization. And we have embarked upon doing that by trying to cut these expenses in terms of trying to do a lot of what used to be contracted out. We try to do that ourselves. We have a very capable workforce, and that workforce is able and competent enough to undertake a lot of the services that used to be contracted out. So that's another way we look at it.
What would happen to WASA if you receive no subsidy, no transfer from government, let's say next year? What would happen to it?
Very good question. We actually generate about 1/3 of the revenue that we actually require internally to sustain our operations. So without government subvention, we'd be, to put it bluntly, dead in the water. We would not be able to meet our wage bills, our obligations to contractors. We would be very seriously challenged if we were not heavily supported by the government.
How many employees do you have?
Currently, we have approximately 5,150 employees in the authority. That includes daily paid as well as monthly paid employees.
How many of those are involved in what can I say, field operations?
I don't have that figure closer. I think the Director of Operations might be better able to answer that question for me in terms of...
Can you offer a response, or you're not sure?
I'm personally not sure, but if I have the Director of Operations as well as Human Resources.
Yeah, I was asking him.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
It's about 2/3 of the workforce that are involved in field operations.
Sorry?
Approximately 2/3 of the workforce are involved in field operations. I don't have the...
How many of those are managerial?
Probably the Director of HR could assist. We don't have that exact breakdown right now. We'll provide that response.
Yeah, if we can get that, I think it'll be useful. And the same for administrative staff. All right, how many do you have administrative staff, and what is the ratio of managerial to the rest of the administrative staff?
We will provide that information, Chairman.
Okay. All right, I will stop at this point, and I will ask, Randall, Minister Mitchell, I had said we'd start from the right, so I'll start with you, if you're comfortable. Yeah. I can go ahead, right.
All right, I'll just ask a quick follow-up question. Based on the response that you just gave, one of your challenges is revenue, but you're not telling us or giving us an idea of what is your operation costs versus your revenue generating, because you said you only have, you as an entity alone can only generate 1/3. So what is the comparison really?
Well, this fiscal year, the government subvention for the Water and Sewerage Authority is somewhere in the vicinity of about $1.9 billion. Our revenue that we generate from the services we provide, water rates and so forth, is approximately $800 million, my apologies. Yes, that we generate on our own.
And that is $800 million based on the billing arrangements where customers pay 3 months in advance payments. Is that what you're talking about?
Billing arrangements as well as what we charge to industrial customers and so forth.
And based on your aging assets, what is your determination of the cost to keep your operations? Is it included in that $1.9 billion?
The last estimate I recall in terms of a wholesale replacement of the aging infrastructure, transmission and distribution lines, if I remember correctly, it's approximately $3 billion if we had to make a wholesale replacement at any one point in time.
All right, I just don't want to I want to make sure I'm clear because I don't want to misrepresent. So your operation cost yearly or annually is 1.9 billion.
No. That's the subvention we get from government. 1.9 billion is what we get from government, approximately.
Okay.
And we generate internally from rates and so forth, we generate approximately, I might be overestimating a little bit, but I think it's closer to about $700 million.
Okay.
So I think the senator wants to know what is your expenditure, annual expenditure. Yeah.
In the vicinity of about $2.6, $2.7 billion per year.
And 2.6 billion is your annual expenditure, and you get 1.9 from government. You generate 800. So we still have $1 billion, some 100,000. Okay, lost. You want to account for how we get that extra money then? Because somehow the maths is not adding up.
Not following, sorry.
All right, okay. Your annual expenditure is
She said, he said 2.6, 2.7.
2.7, yes, correct.
Yeah.
All right.
So the 1.9 and the 8 would give you 2.7.
That includes paying off long-term projects, costs, and these things like that?
Oh, we have some legacy debts as well, and we have, in terms of what we have outstanding currently to contractors, what we have currently outstanding to contractors is about approximately $1 billion to $1.1 billion.
So for the year 2017, you have about $1 billion in debt to pay to contractors?
Yes, that is the contractors, but we have other debts in terms of loans and other amounts that we have payable.
Can you share with the committee and to the public what is your present debt for 2017?
I will ask the Director of Finance.
Debt position, as Minister Mitchell just shared.
I will ask the Minister of Finance, but if I remember correctly, it's probably around $5 billion in terms of debts that we have. But the Director of Finance could probably clarify on that for me.
The debt is broken down into different areas.
Speak up to the microphone, please.
The debt is broken down into different areas. So it would be our accounts payable, which is due to contractors and suppliers. In terms of validated invoices, it is about over 300 million. With respect to unvalidated, it can go approximately 1 billion. In terms of unvalidated invoices that are due for payment. Also, we have the loan portfolio, which I will provide a breakdown of the loan commitments that we have. And then, again, we have our recurrent operating expenditure, which would have been close to the 2 billion, which would include our salaries, wages, and other recurrent expenditure. But I can provide a breakdown of the 5 million.
Yeah, we'd be grateful for that.
Just one more. In relation to the accounts payables that is part of your debt, the 300 million that you spoke of, 300,000, is 300,000 you said? 300 million, sorry, my apologies. 300 million for accounts payables to contractors, correct?
Yes.
Right. This 300 million is supervised by the 2/3 of your workforce, or how is it that you come up with? I would like for some information on how you came up with how you have arrived at this position of the 300 million for accounts payables to contractors.
Okay. So once a service is provided by the authority and there's an approved purchase order, and it goes through our procurement process, and the invoices are validated, meaning it has gone under the required internal control check. We now put that invoice information and contractor information in our aging report. We have over 5,000 suppliers. So the outstanding values for these suppliers that have been validated go on our agent report, and the culmination or the addition of all of those would come up to the value of the over 300 million validated invoices.
Well, you get a chance to ask again to follow up anything. Mr. Leon?
Thank you, Chair. Listening to your statement, aging infrastructure and limited revenue are your major challenges. Now, in terms of the service that we give to the public, am I correct in hearing that you said about $3 billion would be required to replace the aging infrastructure?
Yes, in terms of the aging pipelines, transmission and distribution pipelines, the entire network.
Now, I know quite a bit of money would be spent in terms of repairing leaks and keeping that aging infrastructure operational. Has a study been done in terms of the feasibility or cost analysis between replacement of certain aging infrastructure as opposed to maybe some frequent repair to keep the operation going?
Questions will answer that question.
Good morning again.
Morning.
Yes, we do that all the time. We do feasibility studies, but we have an order of priority based on all limitations with finance. All right, so what is most necessary, we address that within our capabilities, that is. Huh?
No, I understand that, and I expect that. In terms of a report, because finance being a challenge, sometimes your priority would be obviously to keep the operation going. But sometimes in terms of making additional provisions or even special intervention by probably the Ministry of Finance, where certain spending of money is not to the benefit of the authority. You know, it has a report been done specifically in terms of prioritizing, as you would have said, the replacement of specific infrastructure as opposed to the frequent repair of the infrastructure?
I don't know if I can answer your question this way. In terms of when we're replacing pipes, there's a standard we follow. If you have to repair a pipe with a certain frequency, it basically tells you this pipeline needs to be replaced. So once it crosses that threshold, it will then be marked for replacement. That's essentially how it's done. The actual standard, I think Mr. Poon King will be more able to give us some guidance on that.
Yeah, the standard is 4 breaks per kilometer per year. Once it exceeds that value, it'll be identified for replacement. And that informs our capital investment program.
Okay. The lines that would have run the network, the authority would have basically, they would know the ages of the lines. For example, I know in Port of Spain, some of the lines go back as far as the British rule. I'm saying even without the reports of the breaks or the breaches, is it that the breaches are the only stimulant for the identifying of it being a priority?
Good question.
Yes, that is correct. Based on priority, we have to wait on the breaches of all the broken lines to address it.
Okay, all right.
I have a quick follow-up. There is technology that exists in terms of inspection of pipelines, like internal inspection, like paying pipelines. Is that a management plan for WASA to look at this initiative?
I think we're actually in the process of acquiring that piece of equipment right now. Mr. Punking?
Yes, we are in the process of acquiring a ground penetrating radar that will tell you when we measure the pipeline, or we can see from above ground what's going on underground in the pipeline. All right? I think that would answer your question. $1.9 million.
Good day to all. Inventory management. The dry season is coming up, and even in the rainy season, you may find persons having issues with water supply. The truck-borne water supply that is used to support the pipe-borne system, what checks and balances you have to prevent eye gouging for persons who handle the distribution of the truck-borne water supply regarding the inventory management system. Persons who charge for water when they should not.
Good morning, Chairman. With respect to the situation with the upcoming dry season, we know we have a challenge with the lines that are breaking very regularly, and we are putting in place the various things or trucks. We have going out for tender the various trucks that we need to deal with the situation when there's a challenge with water in a particular area. So we also in-house, we also have some trucks both in Tobago and in Trinidad. We have internally approximately about 10 water trucks overall to assist the situation. The others are dealt with respect to the contracts that we offer to some suppliers of water.
Essentially, if I could add to that, essentially we have a dry season plan. And part of the dry season plan would require that all our reservoirs are at peak maximum capacity at the end of the year in preparation for the dry season. The water trucking system is really just to supplement the pipe-borne service. The pipe-borne service, we have some trucks internally, as the CEO has already indicated. We contract out a certain some other trucks as well. They are not supposed to charge for that service. I mean, they're contracted by us. And also the various municipal corporations, they also assist in that regard.
So have there been instances of reports of persons being charged for water, truck-borne water?
Yes, there are instances, and some of those are currently under investigation.
What quantum, in terms of numbers of reports and in terms of dollar value, maybe if you have?
Perhaps the Director of Customer Care could assist. I don't know if you have that information available.
If I may repeat, the numbers in terms of the reports of persons being charged for water by the truck-borne suppliers.
Right. We do get reports of customers being charged by individuals who are not contracted by WASA. In such cases, generally our security within WASA, we will advise, and the matters are investigated towards having the persons dealt with. We encourage that if people do experience that WASA has delivered water and they're being asked to pay, that they do report it to WASA so we could investigate it and deal with it.
Thanks for your response. Do you have a number of reports that you have of persons being charged for water?
I don't have that number offhand, so I'll have to get that in and provide it to the committee.
Okay, thanks. That's the first question. Because again, this has been a cry across the country that persons have been charging for water, and it'll be important for us to know what numbers of reports you're getting and where the reports are coming from, which areas. The property rental system, do you have any information regarding the current, because we have here up to 2013, the current, because again, you're looking at bringing your costs closer to your revenue, if your revenue is currently about 27% based on the 700 million versus 2.6 billion figure given, so roughly it's less than 30% of your entire revenue, your entire expenditure base. What is the current rental value for properties and vehicles? I see up to 2013 it would have been around about 60 million. What is it now?
I don't need the Director of Finance or Director of Corporate Services has that information available, readily available.
With respect to the years after 2013 and 13, we need to provide those figures because we just have, as per the question, well, up to 2013, but those figures can be provided subsequently.
Okay. There's one last question. Maybe I can get a response when the questions come back to me. It's regarding the status of the desalination plant in Point Fortin.
You want to ask the question now? You want an answer to the question now?
Well, I already want to get an update. So.
Yes, okay. Please.
When you say the status in the 2013 audited financial statement, there was some discussion about the Point Fortin desalination plant. Is that what you're referring to? Are you asking about the current production of the Point Fortin desalination plant?
So I left the question open purposely so that you can give me a general update, as brief as possible, so that we understand if there are any issues in general.
Okay, I'll attempt an answer to the question. In terms of the Point Fortin desalination plant, it was an issue in our 2013 audited financial statements in that the auditors were not satisfied with the treatment of how we dealt with the treatment of the Point Fortin desalination plant. And it was required for us to obtain an opinion on it, which we have obtained an opinion from independent, I think it was PricewaterhouseCoopers. In that regard, it was determined it was a finance lease. And some additional work now has to be done in terms of the evaluation of the plant and so forth for it to be properly presented in the 2014 financial statements. That's basically it in terms of the treatment. In terms of the production, they recently expanded the production of the facility so that it could provide more water to the people in that region. It's currently about 5 million gallons a day that it produces to people, to consumers in that area. I don't know if anybody wants to add to that.
Yeah. MP Mitchell.
Thank you very much. Good morning. I'm not sure if I missed it. Came in a bit late. You said that your debt position as at today is $5 billion, about $5 billion in debt. What is your asset position, particularly your receivables, aged receivables?
Aged receivables I had recently indicated was somewhere in the vicinity of about $500 million in terms of money that's due to the authority. But in a closer analysis, I think it's probably close to about $600 million. In terms of the assets of the authority, I think approximately about $7.1 billion in terms of our asset position. The debt we were talking to about was the debt due for government loans, for facilities that we've taken, which for the most part are government guaranteed facilities. And I think the Director of Finance had indicated that our the position in terms of our accounts payable to contractors was about 300 million, and then after in terms of unrecorded liabilities, which are liabilities which have not yet been verified, is somewhere in the vicinity of about $1 billion.
Okay. Let me stay on the age receivables. What measures are you taking? Because $600 million is quite a sum of money. What measures are you taking to improve that position?
Well, we recently announced that we were embarking upon a drive whereby we would take the ultimate step of having to sell properties to recover what is outstanding. Apart from that, there's civil action we could also institute. The first step is normally we just, there's disconnections, and that hopefully that will encourage somebody to come in and pay. But if that doesn't bear fruit, it's progressive. So we move from disconnections, we might write you, urge you to come in to pay. If you don't pay, well,
So
then
you
we
start
have
by
that.
writing, and then you move on to disconnection, and ultimately you can sell to recover. Okay,
Yes.
so disconnection is not as easy as disconnecting electricity. You have to do some work. What is the cost of disconnecting? And how can you improve that situation?
The cost of disconnecting is, to our mind, a little prohibitive. It's approximately about $2,000 per disconnection. So it's sometimes we have to, in terms of feasibility, in terms of deciding if you really want to go and spend that money to go and disconnect somebody. But we have to do it. And you know, most times when we go about a disconnection drive and they see us, people see us disconnecting 1 or 2 houses on the street, you know, basically they will rush in and come and try and pay because they know we'll, you know, you're going to get disconnected. We have the situation where sometimes we go and disconnect and we have people just going back and reconnecting on their own. We get a plumber or somebody and they can't reconnect. But that's to answer your question, that's approximately the cost that we have to incur to disconnect.
And have you considered increasing, I think your reconnection fee is $250, or is it $500? Have you considered increasing your reconnection fee?
As far as I'm aware, that is within the purview of the Regulated Industries Commission, so that will be part of the analysis that we'll be embarking upon when we present our business plan to the RIC to revise rates.
One last question, going back to your debt position. Now, I know you have different business units, and then you have your support services. So you have production, you produce water, and then you distribute water. Between the production and the distribution of water, which incurs the larger, or which has incurred the larger amount of this $5 billion in debt? In other words, you produce water. Is that a profitable business unit? Or is it that, is the distribution profitable, or does that incur the larger amount of expenditure?
It's a hard question to answer, and I'll tell you why. Because production of water, it depends on which is the water source. Let's use, for example, if you have to produce it from desalinated water. Desalinated water is expensive. We pay DesalCut a considerable sum every month to produce water for us. They produce about 40 million gallons a day for us, and might increase during the dry season. And that costs approximately is about $6 million US we pay every month. So if you look at it from that aspect, you might be able to say that that is more expensive in terms of production of water. But distribution, which I think will involve the treatment of water, as well as water treatment plants, chemicals, and all that process, it might be even. I think the director of operations was whispering in my ear that the distribution is more expensive. But if you look at the production of water, that might also be kind of costly.
I'm asking the question because it's widely thought that WASA's problem is in the distribution of water, and perhaps because they run an efficient production business unit. So perhaps WASA can think about perhaps outsourcing the distribution of water. What do you have to say about that?
It's a worthy consideration. It's something that we would certainly take a look at, as part of our strategic plan going forward.
All right. MP Webster, right?
Good Chair. Good morning again. I was going through the list of hired and contracted services for payment for the period 2008 to 2013.
What page is that?
It's one of the appendices submitted.
Oh, sorry, I thought you had it from our responses.
Appendix 3. In a response to an earlier question, it was noted that 69% or 2/3 of staff would be considered as field workers. That's correct? Right. On the list of contracted and hired services for the period that I have indicated before, I noticed large sums paid to various contractors for pipeline maintenance. I want to understand how we could have the bulk of your staff categorized as field workers, and yet we're contracting so many people, putting out a lot of your resources, which is limited, to do pipeline maintenance.
The period on which you're looking at is the 2008 to 2013 period. When the board came in 2015, that was an area that we looked at, and we made the same observation. Basically, we are the experts at doing this. Why are we spending all of this money to contract the services out when we have a very capable workforce that are capable and competent enough to perform those services? We've made a deliberate step in terms of reducing exposure in that area and have been engaged with, trying to do a lot of this work ourselves. We have night crews that will go out and do repairs. We have crews that will, we do a lot of these services ourselves. A lot of our well rehabilitation that we would have normally contracted out, we are now doing ourselves. And we're doing it quite capably.
Okay, so you're saying since 2015, the contracting of services for pipe maintenance would have been curtailed?
Since December 2015. Well, we were appointed, the board was appointed in December 2015. So I would say early 2016, that was a deliberate step that we took in terms of reducing exposure in that regard.
Okay, I want to commend the board for that. I really want to commend you all for that. I want to understand, notwithstanding the fact that you say you do most of it in-house now, do you still contract services for pipeline maintenance?
Well, yes, we do. But it is considerably reduced.
Considerably, okay.
Because there might be instances where we might be stretched, and we would have no alternative but to rely on outside services to help us in that regard.
Now, the reason why I asked that question because again, looking at the list provided for the period 2008 to 2013, I noticed some companies that I'm aware would have had links to certain persons employed by WASA. So I want to understand if you have a policy to guide conflict of interest. How is that policy implemented and monitored?
We have a policy to guide conflict of interest. It's in our business ethics plan. You have to declare your conflict of interest so that we'll be fully aware of it. I think we've actually, in this submission to the committee, we have identified one instance where we have known conflicts of interest. We have had instances as well when we have become aware that people may have a conflict of interest and it was not declared, and we have dealt with that in terms of disciplinary action has been instituted in respect of those persons.
So your conflict of interest policy is being implemented and actively monitored?
It is definitely implemented, and I would also add that even under the Water and Sewerage Act, there are provisions to deal with conflict of interest, especially when it comes to board members. So that is something that we are very vigilant about at the board level, and I think the management, they can expand on it if they so desire, but they also very, very vigilant in terms of that. We don't, if we become aware of it, I'm not saying that it might have happened, but if we become aware of it, we deal with it very strictly and very seriously.
Okay. One other question. How do you verify, whenever you engage contractors, how you verify that the work is actually done according to scope? What's the process?
We're supposed to have a quality control team, but I'll let the Director of Operations answer that question.
Yes, good morning again. All right, yes, as the chairman said, we do have a quality control team that there are very specific measures in which you carry out your business. The criteria are set by the relevant agencies like Ministry of Works and those things for road repair and pipeline repair. We set the criteria, so we have our quality control people looking at that. How are they doing?
Can I just clarify something I just also said? You had asked where we have our conflict of interest rules and so forth. It's also contained in our tender rules that to deal with conflicts of interest as well.
And this question is purely selfish, and it's about Tobago, so forgive me, and it's on behalf of my constituents. Yes, and it's actually for you, Mr. CEO. I noticed that a lot is going out in terms of projects, and a lot of funds are allocated for projects. Please let me know what projects are, what funds would have been expended on projects in Tobago East. Were they done according to schedule and within budget, please?
East. Well, that's west. Well, particularly in East, we are doing some work at the Charlottesville intake. That project will cost approximately $8.3 million. The project is in progress. I went there last weekend, not the weekend before, and the work is heavily in progress there. And The other projects that we have for the east section, well, the east has a good supply of water to a certain degree because you have Richmond producing at maximum continuously. You have, well, some Hillsborough is also producing for Mount St. George area continuously. Supply its maximum production is approximately 1.5 million gallons per day. The Castor and ParlView section, they also have a satisfactory supply of water. And those were done prior to the Charlottesville production.
I wanted to know about those that would have been completed. I'm particularly asking about the pipeline project that was being done throughout. I think it would have started in West, but it continued all the way up in the East. It took some time. I want to know if that project was completed within the budget and according to the schedule.
Well, according to the knowledge I have, the project it has one short connection to make, some coming down somewhere between Pembroke and the Goodwood area to complete that project. The cost, I'm not sure how correct it's stuck to the estimate, but so far that project has served well for the area that it was being done.
Thank you very much, MP Gopi School.
Thank you, Chairman, and good morning to everyone. I want to go back to the core question of the aging infrastructure. I'm not satisfied with the depth of the responses. What you said is that it's a $3 billion program, capital investment program, and I'd like some more detail on that. Age infrastructure impacts cost. WASA's operational cost and customer service. WASA's problems are operational costs and customer service. The customer is not pleased about WASA for the most part. I want you to drill down a little deeply into these into this particular capital investment program, and short-term, medium-term, long-term, and guide us, please, with regard to your short-term. You have just completed a strategic plan for 2017-2022, and that must form a significant part of your strategic plan. I'd like you to start with the short-term and tell us what those plans are, what the costs are, and how feasible it is for you to enter into that. Thank you.
We don't currently have that information. We'll have to provide that to the committee.
So, pardon me, the operational staff are not able to tell us what is the short-term plan with regard to its age infrastructure.
Okay, good morning again. Our age infrastructure, when we did say age infrastructure, most of our plants are over 40 years old, all right? The mean time between failure and the equipment that we are working with, they are supposed to be operational for 25 years. We still have them in operation fully right now, right? As regards to the plan, we are also constrained by financing, changing the equipment, so that is based on parity also. So based on failure and the necessity, we change the equipment. But as to embark on the plan, we have to have the subsequent finance, the additional finance to deal with it.
Yeah, I understand that, and you're treating it on a case-by-case as the work comes up. I understand that you're treating it on a case-by-case basis, and as you are presented with a problem, you deal with it. That's what I'm hearing from you. I cannot, and then you're saying to me that finance is an issue, but before you get to the financing, you must have the plan. I'm simply asking you, and it's not good enough that you can't recall what is the immediate short-term plan. You have a situation where you've recognized that you have infrastructure that is 40 years old, and an infrastructure which has a lifespan of 25 years. So you know that you have a chronic issue before you. You must be able to tell me what is the plan. Talk about the finance after, but you must have a plan.
I will have to provide a written response to that after, because that is an extensive, delayed response, so I will provide a written response to you.
So in the meanwhile, you're just dealing with leaks as they come up, and so because I notice you're digging everywhere, you have and I commend you on the program to deal with all of these leaks. You have to, but at the same time, I can't understand why you're before us, management and board, and you can't see what is your short-term plan. That should be uppermost in your mind, CEO. What is a short-term plan to deal with your age infrastructure?
We have a strategic arrangement that we are going to put in place with respect to the leaks that are affecting our pipelines throughout the country. And we have studied what has happened or what is taking place. We know there are significant amount of leaks. There are like yesterday, there were approximately 2,151 leaks to be fixed. And we are working on that to ensure that that process is rapidly done. We have arranged to put in place night crews to deal with the many leaks that are coming up regularly. We have discussed with our union, because we know it's a unionized environment we're working in, and they have given their commitment to go along with us to have the night crews put in place to facilitate the rapid repairs to the leaking situation in the country. And besides that, we are trying to educate the public and to be as courteous as possible from our call centers and our offices to deal with the customers who have challenging problems with respect to our customer services, to deal with the issue. Those are the immediate things we're putting in place to curb the situation. We also have going in place the various issues with respect to the business plan to enable a better tariff for the payment of water received. That is in process presently, so the RIC can give us an improved rate that we can able to deal with the aging infrastructure.
If I could also add to that, earlier during this session, we indicated that there was a standard that was in place. I think Mr. Punking had elaborated on the standard in place to deal with replacement of pipelines once we find we have to repair a leak on that pipeline too regularly. So I don't want the committee to go with the impression that we are not replacing pipelines. We are replacing pipelines within the constraints of our budget. We may not be able to do a wholesale replacement, but we'll have to rely on the parameters that, in terms of the leaks, how often the leaks are detected, how often we required to expend resources to come and fix the leak. So during that time, once we recognize that, look, this pipeline is, we will replace the pipelines. We have some pipelines in stock, and we would use those pipelines to actually, replace some of those leaking pipelines. Once we realize it's just going on too long.
Yeah, but you keep talking about leak detection, so you're waiting for the problem to arise, and I'm saying, what can you anticipate? Can you not anticipate the fact that you have aged infrastructure? Can you not anticipate, look, we need to go to X area and deal with it? Is that the approach, or are you going only on the detection basis?
To put it bluntly, if it's not leaking, we don't interfere with it. That's what I understand from. Yes, it might be aged, but if it's not, remember we have constraints in terms of finances. If the pipe is not leaking, we're not going to interfere with it. We will continue using it. It might be past its useful life, but we'll continue using it until we start to realize that we have some issues here. We need to replace these pipelines.
Doesn't seem to be all together. Sorry, please. Sorry.
And just remember as well, I think Mr. Shepherd had indicated that we were in the process of acquiring some leak radars, leak detection radars, so that we could actually discover, where pipes are leaking excessively and below the surface where we can't see, and we would try and address that as well, as part of our plan.
Okay, thank you. So we await the additional information on your constructive plans for dealing with this on a short, medium, and long-term basis. But I want to go to the unserviced areas in Trinidad and Tobago. Are there areas that are unserviced at this time in terms of there being no water supply? Or is there some amount of water supply everywhere in Trinidad and Tobago?
The last figure I think I recall is that 92% of the population basically has a water supply. There will be people who basically go and construct houses or developments outside of our transmission network, outside of our service area, and those they will not have pipe-borne supply. There was some areas quite recently that we had to we ran some lines quite. I think what was the area again? No. The Mackay development. That they were outside of the distribution network for a little while, and as the population in that area grew, we basically realized that we had to, extend our network to these areas. So basically, by our last count, is about 92% of the population is within our transmission network and are receiving a pipe-borne supply.
And the 8%? The 8%?
Well, as I said, they might be outside of our transmission network. So for instance, let's use an example. You might have a squatting community that with very few people that have gone and live in an area that it's beyond our transmission network. That would normally be outside of that area. And as we recognize that these communities grow, we would recognize that, and we would then increase our network to provide a water supply to these areas.
And the 92%, will they be getting water at least three days per week?
No, not everybody will get water 3 days a week. I think they might drop to no. I think the lowest we go to is 2 times a week.
Twice a week?
Yes.
What percentage will receive water twice a week?
I don't have that figure available. I don't know if anybody else has that figure available right now. We'll provide that information to the committee.
My last question would be about the business community. The manufacturing sector is very important in this country's diversification efforts. And I can say that there is considerable growth, and in that particular sector, water is a great requirement because it's in the food and beverage sector. You're the ones who are intimately working with them. Are you able to satisfy the demands of the manufacturers of Trinidad and Tobago, the business sector?
We are able to satisfy the demands. There might be times where we have challenges, but we work very cooperatively with the individuals in these companies, and address any concerns or complaints that they might have.
Quite specifically, I know that there was an issue in the Diamondville Industrial Estate, and that you had embarked on another well, constructing another well, if I'm right.
Yeah.
Could you give me an up-to-date position on that?
That was the Factory Road well. There was a well in that area before, but the production in that well dropped significantly. It took us a little while, but we got the cooperation of the companies in that area, that we were able to site a new well within I think it was the ANSA compound, and we have embarked upon drilling on that new well. That new well it's almost finished. I actually think it's going to be finished and put into production by the end of this week.
Then they will be up to 70 supply, full supply?
They will get the full supply. Actually, the well has performed, by all initial testing, has produced significantly more water than we had actually anticipated. And we are confident that we'll be able to satisfy the needs of the companies within the Diamondville area.
And if there are to be interruptions of any sort in any industrial park or with any, in the business areas, commercial areas, if there are to be interruptions, are they largely on the weekend? And do you try to do your work and so on the weekend, so that you do not impact operations? What's your strategy? How do you deal with it?
These companies, a lot of them have internal storage as well. So they have built-in capacity for any downtime. We also have some redundancy built into our system so that we can actually provide water to companies that if unforeseen event occurs whereby we have to, do any repairs or anything of that nature. But for the most part, we would work with these companies to try and make sure that the downtime and the effect to their operations is minimized.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. CEO, what is the daily loss of water from the leakages that you are aware of?
Chairman, at least as an engineer, I don't like to do guesswork. And I sometimes try to believe that the figure for water loss is lower than what is given, but they said it's approximately between 43 to 50% of the water.
You lose on a daily basis that high a percentage of water, 43 to 50%?
That is what has been assessed.
Shouldn't that then be a priority?
It is.
Because why worry about producing water when you are losing half of it every day? I mean, does that make sense? I mean, couldn't we make that a priority for the country?
Yes, it is. It's a priority. It's one of our leading priorities in the authority. And we, as we have the aggressive leak plan, correction plans that we have, we are also going to do testing to ensure that the figure that I have given you is correct. Yeah, but it's not. We don't have it all tested to say exactly it is that amount, but that was the given estimate. But we will probably go forward to ensure that we get the correct figure as to our non-revenue water, the water that's...
But even if you were off by 15% and it was 30%, that would be extremely high. That would be a lot of loss of drinking water.
It is definitely, please, Chairman. The actual standard in the developed world is probably somewhere in the vicinity of 15 to 20%. But anything above that is considered considerably high, and it is an area that we are currently addressing. The ministry has actually put that as a priority.
This is a priority for you then?
The ministry, the board and the ministry have placed it as probably the #1 priority in our strategic plan for this period going forward, that we have to get those leaks down within acceptable levels.
Okay, now I know the government has a strategy of some kind to deal with subventions to state entities, but what about WASA's? I mean, given your particular situation here, where your financial state is really challenging, is there a plan to reduce government subvention from you? Do you have a plan to reduce your dependence on government?
Well, we are currently going through the rate review exercise with the Regulated Industries Commission. So that in itself, on the assumption that the Regulated Industries Commission does in fact increase the rates to an economic standard, we would expect that we'll be weaned off of the government purse or the state purse within the near future. Gradually. I don't expect it to be eliminated, but I expect that the amount of subvention that we are currently receiving would be considerably reduced over time.
What about the question that Ms. Webster Roy asked about the relationship between the 2/3 employees who were involved in field operations and the high number of contracts that are actually entered into for work done in the field? I mean, isn't that an area that can be properly managed? You get the people within WASA to work more and more diligently and in a much more focused way, and you reduce the number of contracts and therefore the cost to the company?
Chairman, according to what the authority is doing and in collaboration, management and the board, we have decided there were several contracts dealing with our compounds, and we have take out those contractors. We have stopped those contractors, and it saved the authority approximately $30 million So those, we are doing those ground maintenance in-house. So most of the things that are creating a great expenditure and the work can be done in-house is a strategic approach that in-house operation will overrule.
Okay, does WASA have any pending lawsuits that, in addition to debt, that we should worry about?
We have some significant lawsuits that filed by certain contractors, which we are vigorously defending in court. You want us to name those matters?
Well, I don't think the committee would mind knowing what the facts are. And the public would like to know.
Well, yes, they're currently before the, I don't know if you want us to, well, I'll tell you basically there are one or two that involve security services, contracts that have been terminated, and we are dealing with those in court that we feel very adamant that we should resist those claims that are being made. That is probably.
So you feel you have a good case there?
Well, so the lawyers keep telling us.
Right. Anything else that you'd like to share with us? You don't have to give us the facts of the case, just the yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's another significant. Probably Mr. Abdul could probably.
All right. Okay.
Assist us more in that regard.
Okay.
Good morning, Chair, committee again. Before us, at this time, it was approximately $300 million in exposure due to litigation. We have some major contracts, one the Chair adverted to, upwards of $100 million. We have smaller ones, but basically there are claims for work done or breach of contract that are before the court. And they feature prominently with our finance division when we speak about how much is our exposure recorded and unrecorded out there.
Okay. You said these are claims for work done. Is it that WASA is claiming that the work claimed for was not done?
No. I think there's a principal position if work has been done and can be verified as being done, the payment will be following in accordance with our tenders rules and our approval processes, right? That's the verification process. Where we are not satisfied that that has been done, those are matters we will defend vigorously if we are taken to court about it.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. I will move.
All right. Just to amplify what the Chair was asking just now, our economic circumstances are clearly different from what obtained prior to 2013. So can you explain, apart from moving away from external contractors and doing more work in-house, what other initiatives, what other measures have you done to increase the efficiencies, decrease your expenditure, waste, fat?
I think the CEO had actually highlighted some of the areas in that regard. In terms of ground maintenance, there was significant amount of ground maintenance crew contractors. We've reduced exposure in that area. Pipeline repairs, you know, some of them escape me right now, but the vehicle rentals is the next area that we have cut down significantly. When the board came in, I think WASA was renting somewhere about 500 vehicles, you know, and within months, I would say within 6 months, we were able to return approximately, I think it was based on the report, 99 vehicles, close to 100 vehicles we had returned, and that is a significant amount of expenditure in you know, and it didn't affect our operations. So we were very concerned about the amount of vehicles that were being rented, and we cut down in that area. Advertising services, that was our next significant area that we found there was a lot of expenditure in that regard that we've curtailed significantly. We have a very good in-house committee, in-house corporation communications team that we rely on, and they do a lot of those services that were previously contracted out. So in that regard, we've you know, reduced expenditure in that regard. You know, utilizing technology is another way we've tried to, in terms of landline costs, as opposed, you know, telecommunications. That's another area that we have, you know,
So this current board, can you quantify for me the percentage reduction in expenditure, annual expenditure, you may have been able to achieve?
I may not have that figure close at hand, but I remember last when we had looked at, for instance, in terms of contracted services, it was in the vicinity of hundreds of millions of dollars that we were able to save by less reliance and utilizing in-house teams to do what was previously done. That is one particular area. In terms of the vehicles, and the Director of Finance might be able to help me, I think it was somewhere in the vicinity of about $6 to $8 million that we had saved.
Yeah. Well, you can provide the specifics
I can
in
provide
writing.
the specifics later, yes.
Let me just move on quickly to two areas, inventory and record keeping. I'm looking at your management letter 2013. And in that letter, I think the auditor would have qualified the audit report because they noted a significant number of unexplained differences, overages, and shortages. And they could not quantify the extent to which the inventory is misstated. I'd like you to comment on that. What has been done to improve your inventory record keeping and record keeping on the whole? The auditors also commented that in many instances, management could not locate supporting documentation requested by the auditor for testing. And I also recall that in 2015, there was also a fire. Can you tell me what has been done to improve the security and the efficiency of your record keeping? So both the inventory and the record keeping aspect.
I would prefer not to comment on the record keeping aspect because that is a part of our security apparatus where we safeguard our information, and basically we have it kept off-site. Apart from keeping it off-site, I wouldn't want to reveal, you know, too much details on that.
No, not the detail, but what has been done, because the auditors clearly commented that, you know, they could not find documents or supporting documentation could not be provided to the auditors for testing. So I don't want the specifics as to where it's held or how it's held or in which cloud or wherever.
Right,
But
and I'll also add that it's currently under 24-hour guard.
Yeah.
In that regard. But in terms of what has been done to address the auditor complaints, I'll ask the Director of Finance to respond to that.
The issue of missing documentation would have been for varied reasons. Yes, there was some material that would have been lost in the fire that would have accounted for the auditors not obtaining documents. Also, some of the reasons would have been in terms of internal filing, ensuring that the proper records and stuff are in place. We have put systems in place to ensure that that has changed. Also, we have updated our new financial management system, which does not rely on manual input of information. It feeds directly from different modules in the department. So there's no longer need to keep as much documentation for the auditors to verify because the information goes directly into the financial module. It is free of, there's minimal manual input into that. So the audit would have been done in 2013. We are currently in 2017. So there would have been changes after that. So we are expecting that this particular qualification would not represent itself after the introduction of the new Oracle system.
That's good to hear. And the inventory, because there would be leakages with respect to inventory, theft, and so on. And there was actually a qualification in the audit report. what has been done with respect to your inventory management? And is it according to international best practices or some international standard, the system, or how have you improved your inventory keeping?
Okay, so in terms of stocks, and just for clarification, in terms of inventory items not being in place, we have identified some hard controls in terms of the implementation of camera systems at our locations where we have high-valued items and so forth. Also, we also have the Oracle system, which keeps account of a running balance of which stocks we have in place. That is supplemented by scheduled cash counts and unscheduled cash counts to identify if there are any differences that may occur. And should that happen and the person has been identified, it will be treated in accordance with our HR policy.
Last question. Compared to international benchmarks, how does WASA rank in terms of its size of staff? Is it overstaffed, or is it, does it meet the international benchmark for the amount of staff needed for this particular type of authority?
In a word, we're overstaffed. But I think in terms of the details, I think Mr. Poon King, Director of Customer Care, might be able to give you some more detailed information in that regard.
Okay, within the Caribbean, our counterparts, they have around seven employees per 1,000 connections. We're currently at around 13 employees per 1,000 connections. So that gives you an idea as to where we are compared to other utilities.
Okay, thank you.
Senator Ramkissoon.
Thank you.
Let's speed things up. We're going
Thank you,
until
Mr. Chair.
1 p.m., so you want to give everybody a chance.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do want to look at the project capital, special projects and capital costs. But before I do that, I just want to touch on a question Mr. Mitchell just raised in terms of the anti-fraud. Now, you all have a conflict of interest policy that you have submitted in tab 11, which was done in 2014, I believe. And there is methods of how you would discipline your employees based on the disciplinary action as per section 3.3, which deals with the CEO determines the actions, and the remedies extend to the termination of employment, restitution, and forwarding information to the appropriate authorities. However, when you look at tab 12, and we look at the fraudulent investigations performed during the last 3 years, there's matters that was here, that example, item 2, which says attempt to process fraudulent prepared time allowance pay sheets where an employee was submitting false wages documents to the benefits of her husband. This employee was transferred from the department, which is not in direct conformance with your policy or your disciplinary actions. Would you like to share what is the reason for that?
I don't know these particular details of this particular matter. I could perhaps ask the Director of Human Resources to address this, but I am aware currently that a member of an individual who was seen to be tampering or making incorrect additions or comments on timesheets was suspended and is currently going through the disciplinary process. This may be, I'm not quite sure when this occurred, but I'll ask the Director of Human Resources to respond to that.
But before she does, Mr. Chairman, there's another item, another matter on this, in this appendix that was supplied that dealt with another employee who was demoted and transferred from the department for assisting in the unauthorized removal of tendered time allowance sheets for the payroll department, and that was another case. So it's not a one-off case, it had multiple cases that was listed here that dealt with just persons being transferred or demoted, but not in conformance with your present disciplinary actions.
I will ask the Director of Human Resources to respond to that.
Good morning again. Our disciplinary process provides for a tribunal hearing, and we tend to go with the ruling of the tribunal. So in this particular case, I suspect that that would have been the ruling. I don't have all the information right now, but we could provide further details. But there is a process in place where a tribunal is established, and they would give their ruling on the case as part of our disciplinary procedure as per collective agreement.
So would you be amending your policy in dealing with fraud activities in WASA, because this is in conflict with your document that you presented to the committee?
Well, I'm not sure if we need to amend the policy. We would, no matter what, due process is involved. People must be afforded due process. If part of our due process involves a disciplinary tribunal sitting and deliberating upon a matter, we will follow that process and abide by the outcome of that process. So I'm not quite certain, without more details as to this particular matter, I'm not quite certain if it is required that we make any amendments to our disciplinary process.
Mr. Chairman, all I'm saying is you are following a process, which is due process, no problem. But your documentation doesn't support what you're doing, because all it says is that your CEO determines the actions. And if that is outdated, you need to just update your documents. That's all I'm saying. Now, I do...
Proceed.
Okay. I do want to move quickly to the projects that has been presented to us, but I do want you just to consider that, because I don't want WASA to be put in a position where you're following due process, but we don't know where that process is or where it came from, right? Okay, my concern is coming out or stemming from Senator Gopi Spoon's comment about the short-term, long-term, medium-term projects. I believe, and I would have liked to hear, that your long-term solution is moving away from a reactive method and more of a preventative method. There are things that we can do here locally and does not cost $1.9 million, such as you can, if you do not know the date that you have installed your piping, because I believe even though we have some senior members, you may not have been there when it was initially laid, but you would have your existing design life. If you have exceeded that, you should definitely know what is your corrosion rate of your pipelines, right? You should know that, and that will lead which piping needs to be changed or when is your existing minimum pipe life, and should not be waiting for a 5-leak method in the era of 2017 when so much technology is available to say I'm waiting for my pipeline to leak and then repair it, because you have said you have 356 leaks to date, which is leading us to 40% or a minimum of 40% water loss, when there are things that can be done cheaply right now available. I'm sure you have in-house specialized engineers who can assist you with these methods. So let me just talk about one of the projects.
May I respond to that?
Oh, sure.
We did indicate early in our session that we were you referred to the $1.9 million cost. But that is also part of the, as we said, that was the leak detection radar. Yeah. Even though a pipe, you might be correct in saying a pipeline might have a certain useful life, there are things that we can do to extend the life of a pipeline. We can treat the water in such a way that the pipe does not corrode as rapidly as, you know, with increased technology, with new chemicals and new materials available, something that may be able to expand the life of particular items. So that, remember what we are doing, we are also managing the resources we have based on our financial circumstances. So we have to bear that in mind in terms of, it's not cheap to go and make a wholesale replacement of pipelines. Yes, I hear what you're saying in terms of repairing pipelines that don't necessarily rely on the method of 4 leaks every, per kilometer or whatever the case may be. But I think in terms of the management and allocation of resources, I think we're doing a pretty good job in that regard. We could do better, yes, but I think it's within the constraints that we have right now.
Okay, no problem. But do remember, you all mentioned that you all are doing feasibility studies that should be leading this entire process. Nevertheless, let's look at Special Projects SP085 And this is actually special projects that were supposed to end in the fiscal year of 2012-2013. And this deals with SCADA expansion, the installation of SCADA systems to monitor and control where required operations at selected off-takes. Oh, sorry, my bad. The installation of SCADA systems to monitor and control operations at selected reservoir and tanks. Now, one of my colleagues raised earlier about the dry season coming up and what's going to be done. Now, SCADA, for those who are not aware what the SCADA program is about an online system that takes away from dipping tanks or climbing up the ladder to see what is the level of the tank. So you have an online process of knowing what is your water level without even going on the field. So I saw that this project was deferred in 2012-2013, and I just want for the board and the management to tell us what is the existing status of this SCADA expansion. If it's still on the table, what is the plan?
Shepard, you want to take it? Well, in terms of SCADA, SCADA also allows us to remotely operate a plant, okay? So that it's, as you say, it's online, it's real time. We can sit down in a room and basically see what is happening with a particular plant. It is a project that we are trying to expand upon so that we could basically automate more of our water treatment plants so that we could see these systems online more readily. In terms of it is an initiative of the executive management team that has been brought to the board and has found favor with us, and we are hoping that it will be implemented within short term to expand more plants along that SCADA line.
So the cost we saw here, as I said, is 2013, 2012. 2012, 2013, my apologies. We are now in 2018, literally. When is it that you anticipate that this project would be starting, and what is the estimated cost? Would it be a different cost, considering it's a different time?
The SCADA program has already started. We already have some plants that are automated. Mr. Shepard could probably give us some more details in terms of how many plants we have in operation using the SCADA system and some more details.
Senator, I would suggest that you pursue your question until you get the answer that you need.
Okay.
Hi, good morning once more. Okay, presently we have about 19 of our installations SCADA operated. All right. Right now we are presently rejuvenating the control room, which we have located in the. There was a project that was initiated with the Israelis. I can't remember the exact year, and we are rejuvenating that control room right now. That is in the tune of about $9 million. To fully automate plants, that costs another $12 million to automate 4 plants, which when we look at it, we have a payback. We have done analysis, and it will be a payback period with removing operators and stuff of approximately 2.5 years, right? But the initial finance is, again, our constraint.
Okay, let me pause you for a moment, the Director Operations Acting. From the costing you have given us here, you said $9 million. You have only, here is only $2.3 million for the cost, right? And this is for the monitoring of the reservoirs and the tanks. Now you're talking about 19 locations. What is the, well, that is not even listed here. So is there another list of projects that WASA still has to submit to the committee?
We don't have the information on the reservoirs which you are speaking about, so we'll forward it in response in writing to you all.
But have you done anything with your reservoir tanks? Because there's also operations of selected wells, which was deferred. There's water treatment plants deferred. There's wastewater lift station facilities deferred. Monitor and control the operations of regional facilities also deferred, and all of these are SCADA projects, as well as doing like booster stations, off-takes, all of these. And as we said, this is a way of monitoring what is our water presently before we get into the dry season. So there's no costing and also no start date or anything. It's just deferred. So
Any response to the question?
Okay. The reservoirs of which you're speaking about.
I think the basic question the senator is asking is that how are you going to plan and organize anything if you don't know what your situation is? And if every time you want to find out how much water you have to send a man to find out?
No, and that's what I'm saying. No, we don't. We have our major reservoirs. We have 4 major reservoirs, all right? And yes, we have people there at the reservoirs. We also have automation SCADA at the Tampuna Dam, which tells us the lake levels also at the Navet. And the 4 areas are also Hillsborough, right? So we have automation at least 2 of these. One at Hillsborough, we do that manually basically right now. So we are getting there. I am not sure of the project of which you are talking about, right? But we will. Excuse me.
Like me to give you the numbers? There's a project ID.
Yes.
And you submitted it.
Could you direct us to the page, please?
There's no page number. So we're looking at SP 083, 84, 85, 86, 87, 88, 89, 90. No, 89 is the last one. But by the time, I think what we probably should do, since you have to resubmit to these committees some information, I think this could be included as a additional document, since you cannot really give us a guidance of what is your plan related to this, and we should really be moving away from the manual system.
Yeah,
So,
well,
yes,
Chair, may I say, actually, the control room that Mr. Shepherd, the director, has spoken about, we're trying to restore that. What will that room will do? Will enable to feed information to our call center. So if we run the SCADA throughout the entire country, getting the details of the flows and the various pressures, etc., we will know when a plant or a well is out of operation. So you could able to alert the call center, and customer care could inform the population in the area what has happened. So that is the actual overall global approach that we're going to do, because you cannot, as they said, manage it manually. The SCADA will enable an easier way of managing the entire operation. So that is the plan going forward.
So, Mr. CEO, do you have an estimated time to which you want this global plan to be happening in Trinidad and Tobago?
Well, actually, I wanted it to happen since last year, but it hasn't happened. But what we do, we are assiduously working to ensure that what resources we have, we can put that in place so we can keep our customers comfortable and also put the necessary things in place to ensure that our customers are treated carefully with respect to water loss or water shortage in various areas because of downtime in wells or intakes, etc. So it's a global approach to managing the challenges that face both the customer and the organization with respect to data information.
Thank you. But Mr. CEO, one guidance I have to give you with that is, since you have not allocated any costs, and we have already seen costs going up of 9 million when you have a projected just here for 2 million. You just need to, when you don't have these things planned out specifically, you tend to spend more than you had anticipated, and it affects your budget, and then it goes back into your debt of $5 billion. So, but I want to move away from this point, and I want to talk about project SP112, which is the Independent Engineering Auditor, and it has a comment here, 4%. I saw commitments of $7.6 million. The project status is completed. Would you like to just share with the committee about this independent engineering audit that cost $7.6 million?
Response?
Chairman, I'm not quite certain where we're reading from, and what year that expenditure was incurred.
Now, this was the package that was submitted by WASA under the heading Financial Planning and Management Department, Project Accounting, Public Sector Investment Program, as at the end of 2012, 2012/2013 fiscal year, and it is, gosh, that's, yeah, special projects, and it is under project ID. Unfortunately, you all didn't put page numbers, so I don't have a page number to give you. But the appendix number is 2. Appendix number 2, and special projects SB 112.
The specific question that you are asking is
on the independent engineering auditor, which was 4%. I don't know what the 4% is about, and we spent 7.6 million. I don't know what was that for.
Yes, in other words, the numbers do not make sense to her, and she would like an interpretation of it.
That was within the 2012 to 2013 fiscal year. We don't have that information available. We'll provide that information to the committee.
Okay. And since you are providing information to the committee, can you also share with us for Appendix 10, item number 216 for the project code, there is a leak management program which is estimated to be 1.7 million or 56.1 million. And for 2009, 10, 11, and 12, and 13, there's no cost and there's no estimated cost, but yet it appears as a project code. And that is part of your capital expenditure. That also I would like some guidance on, especially with leak management, since I was highlighted for the entire morning so far.
You will please send an explanation of that. And I just want to ask the Board of WASA that there were a number of commitments made here this morning of matters to be forwarded to us by way of information. And please hold to that and provide us with the supplementary information that we have asked for. I will move on to MP Schoon because she has to leave afterwards, so I'll let her ask questions now until she leaves.
Thank you very much. And 2 straightforward questions on project management and procurement. With regard to the new procurement legislation, I would imagine that WASA has by now reviewed their procurement policies and in line with the recommendations which were given by government. Could you just update us on your review and your plans forward with regard to the project management to ensure that the unit is now watertight in terms of its remit?
Chairman, members, we have been discussing and working along with the procurement legislation for some time. Notwithstanding, it has not been fully proclaimed as yet. However, at this time, I can tell you we have sensitized our procurement organization within WASA. We have developed a procurement organization as required under the Act. We've sensitized management, the tenders committee, the board as to what is required. The next step is we await now the issue of the handbooks, and so from the Ministry of Public Utilities, a working session with the Public Utilities Ministry is expected to take place in January, and we understand the procurement regulator should be appointed shortly. So at this time, we think we are step in line with what is required under the legislation and ready to go out to perform our duties under the required legislation at this time.
Good, thank you. And with regard to your project management unit, what's a complement? How would you rate its effectiveness? And all projects, are they handled in-house or are they outsourced? In particular, for complex projects, or do you outsource those? I want a sense of how the project management unit is, how effective is it?
Good morning. Yes, internally there is a project management unit, and the unit is subdivided into focus in various areas within the business of WASA. So we have like with water, and then that water division is subdivided into different areas in terms of water treatment, wells, metering. We look in terms of also non-revenue water. And we also have in terms of the wastewater aspect, where we look also in a parallel component in terms of the treatment aspect, the expansion of the network, And in terms of also, in terms of the assets itself, if we need to rehabilitate or upgrade those assets. We also have, in terms of the softer side, in terms of the project management area, we also have, where we look at the softer side projects also within that particular division.
What is the staff complement, and are there any vacancies?
The staff complement is approximately I would say about 30, 40 persons within that particular unit. And in terms of vacancies, we do have some, but we're looking in terms of internally, in terms of securing those particular positions, in terms of persons within WASA.
Are any of your project management activities outsourced? And if so, when and in what circumstances? And
okay, we do have some projects which, depending in terms of the size, in terms of the complexity, that it will be contracted. And we look, for example, in terms of some of the projects, we do have, like, for example, the wastewater project that we're currently doing, that because of its size and complexity, that has been outsourced. And we'll look in terms of the nature and in terms of the time frame for the implementation of the project itself, and in terms of the size and I said the complexity, determine whether we go out or if we will retain it in-house.
are you satisfied that the unit is effective enough and for the most part doing, attending to as many projects as possible in-house? The idea is to save costs, and if it is that you have units that are set up for that particular purpose, then I would imagine you'll have varying levels of competencies, and for the most part, you ought to be doing, a large amount of your projects. Is that the case, or is it that, it's just in exceptional circumstances where you have very, very large projects that you would outsource?
No, the unit actually has been in existence for quite some time, and we have been doing projects both in-house as well as externally, where we would have gone out to contract. But the major problem facing us right now is in terms of the funding, in terms of getting out to proceed with respect to a number of projects that we have on our drawing board right now.
What percentage of your project management services would you say are done in-house as opposed to outsourced?
I would say I would say currently in-house we do approximately about 60% in-house.
So you're satisfied, as I would imagine you are the manager of the project management project management services. Are you satisfied as to the effectiveness?
I would say yes, we are satisfied, but I just want to reiterate the point that, a lot of the projects are not proceeding as how we would like it to proceed in terms of a timely manner, mainly because of the funding aspect right now for us.
As CEO, can I get a qualifying comment from you?
Chair, according to what Ms. Lee Singer said, she's correct, and with respect to project, as she said, we have consultants handling, managing some of the work, while the consultant report to the director also. So it's an arrangement that we try to get the best practice in to ensure that we get the best out of the resources we have. But as she said, and I would not to be repetitious, the challenge with respect to funds.
Funds alone or time?
Well, with fund, when you have a challenge with funds, you have an extension of time with respect to the job, because you don't have enough money to deal with the contractor to pay them on time, and et cetera, as effect.
Being given the attention that it is due.
Sure.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. MP Leon.
Thanks, Chair. First, I would like to commend your team on reducing expenditure by increasing the amount of in-house work that you do. With respect to providing customer service in areas that you would identify as high priority based on your equation with more than 4 fails, I believe it was. In the area that I represent, I would assume, based on my personal experience, that most of the distribution within there would have some significant priority. However, there's a challenge with respect to it being coined a high-risk area. And I know you have significant financial challenges and security. I heard you say earlier that one of the issues you would have had, I think, a court case with a security firm. What then is the strategy for like communities that would be considered to be high priority because of their degrading infrastructure or lack or inability to properly deliver to these customers?
Customer service is a priority regardless of whichever community or whichever area. That's a priority across the board. In terms of dealing with getting into high-risk areas, sometimes to do repairs, we have our own in-house security service that will accompany our employees when they're going to perform jobs in what is termed high-risk areas. We would also notify the National Police Service, and they will also provide some assistance in some of the more what you call hotspots. And, you know, in collaboration with them, we are able to perform our services in that regard.
So you don't see this as a challenge at all?
It is a challenge. It is a challenge. You know, whereas you could just go, some places you could just go in and just perform the repairs, sometimes you have to do a lot more coordination. So you'll have to schedule when you could go in to do certain work in certain areas, you know, because it will also depend on the manpower resources of the police service. You'll have to schedule our in-house security team. So it is a challenge, you know, so we might not be able to effect repairs as quickly as we would like because of that challenge.
Right. The reason why I'm raising it, and it's really for the benefit of my community, is that because I understand it's a challenge, it's a significant challenge, I think. I've seen Ministry of Works partner with other security agencies in executing some of these works, and because the customer suffers at the end of the day, has there been any consideration to partner with other ministries under maybe the national security? Because I know bringing in police, from what I understand, correct me if I'm wrong, there's some payment that has to be made, which doesn't help with your financial situation. And the end user suffers, and I suffer because they come to me. Right, so I'm simply asking if any consideration, any serious discussion has been made with respect to other agencies partnering in terms of mitigating against some of the risks and really being able to come to an efficient way of delivering to these customers.
Let me answer your question this way. For instance, quite recently, we've embarked on an initiative to seek the assistance of the Defense Force to, you know, accompany us when we are going into some areas. This is currently under discussion. It's an initiative that we are currently, you know, trying to implement in terms of trying to assist in terms of the security apparatus that we are available to us. Quite recently as well, in terms of traffic management, it was facilitated under the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. They did some training in-house for our security team, as well as I think it was TNTech who were part of that training as well, training exercise, and, you know, to better equip the officers in our employ to handle traffic situations and as such.
Senator Bika, I'll have to go on.
Thank this, Chair. Sorry, Chair. And you see the this conversation having a favorable outcome in respect to having these services done?
Well, definitely. They're progressing very nicely so far, in terms of discussions with the national, the military.
Thank you very much. Thanks very much, Chair.
Okay. Time to be
Good day. Thanks again, Chair. All right, so in the interest of time, I will ask my questions briefly, and I would hope my questions would have been crafted in such that we can get brief answers. Number one, what percent of the $700 million rough figure for income comes from residential users?
Mr. Poolking, could you answer that question?
Approximately 40%.
Sorry?
Approximately 40%.
40%, okay. The rate increase that is being telegraphed, all right, or desired by WASA, what would be the desired rate for the residential users? I believe there are some residential users that pay $75 a month. I'm guessing, yeah. What would be desired increase?
Yeah, we're currently, doing our business plan to present to the Regulated Industries Commission to make a representation in that regard to basically, advocate for a particular rate. So it's not yet completed, and we hope that should be ready before the end of the month.
What percent increase? Because I know there was something in the public space, but what percent, general idea? Because you must by now, if it's going to be ready in a month, that's before Carnival. Not much happens between now in Trinidad and just before Carnival, right? Except if you're preparing for Panorama. So what exactly, would it be a 10% increase? Would it be a threefold increase?
It's too early to say. We basically, the consultant that we've brought in a consultant to assist us in this process, an IDB-funded consultant, and they are currently working with the management team to come up with a proper business plan to make a proper presentation to the Regulated Industries Commission in this regard. So it's premature for us to say.
I'm sure there must be something internally, but I would defer that one. There was also something in the public space regarding persons being served notice for seizure of their property. How many persons have been served notice for seizure of their homes?
We have, over the past couple weekends, I think we have advertised 6. It was 3 every weekend. There were 2 notices the first weekend, 2 the following weekend, and 1 the other weekend because one address was wrong. So approximately about 5 people we have indicated to them that if they don't bring their rates up to date, their arrears up to date, we will be proceeding under the Rates and Charges Recovery Act to sell their properties.
Which parts, how many years or months did they owe, on average, minimum to maximum?
At least 4.
4 years. So that if
4 years or 4 months?
At least 4 years.
4 years. And if we use the $75 a month figure, that means they'll be owing roughly about $4,000.
Well, the properties that we've targeted are so far commercial properties, which rates are different. We have not targeted residential customers. We are currently targeting commercial customers. And I'll add that these commercial customers, when the properties were advertised, they have come into the authority and made arrangements to liquidate the arrears. So far, I don't think there are any that have not yet come in and made some arrangements to liquidate the arrears. They've paid down a substantial amount, and the balance to be liquidated over the course of a couple months.
Any residential customers being served or plans to serve notice any residential customers?
If after this period we don't get a satisfactory response, we will take that next step. It is not something that we're doing lightly. It is something that we first engage the customers, have a discussion with them, try to encourage them to pay. It is only as a last resort that we go to that step.
And how many of these customers are being looked at, these residential customers?
We haven't started looking at residential customers as yet in terms of this, for this exercise.
All right, so that's number one. The other thing is, for the Ministry of Public Utilities, is there a senior economist in the employ of the ministry at the moment? Is that position filled?
Yes, that position. Remember, that position is currently filled.
Is that a contract or permanent post?
No, that's a position on the permanent establishment.
All right. That is for what position? Director or senior economist?
No, senior economist. The director position is currently vacant. We would be, in fact, working along the Service Commission Department to have that position filled.
Okay. This is another question for us regarding the building of water lines below the roads. I come from Point Fortin to Port of Spain every day. And in Labrie and Vance River, the roads are such, because it's the water, the roads are swampy, the area is swampy. What is the rationale for building, given the heavy vehicles traversing those routes? What is the rationale for building below the road surface, the pipelines? Is it we are concerned about theft? Is it what? Because Labrie, 3 hands, that stretch, it's the mother of the lake. For those who don't know, the mother means that's where basically like a volcano. It changes. So what is the rationale, especially in Labrie and Vance River, where it's swampy, that you put the pipelines below the road surface?
Through the chair, we get complaints about that every day in terms of the condition of the roads down there and the lines. Quite honestly, and I'm being frank, I don't know why. Because to me, the movement of the ground in that area, it's, as you know, it's the pitch lake. So it's not, the lines basically sink after time and end up breaking, and we have to go keep on repairing. There should be a more robust approach in this regard. I'm not quite certain what the plans are in that regard to deal with this.
But you are the chair, sir.
Well, and I'm answering as honestly as I can. I mean, when it came to my attention within recent times, like the member, I have lots of concerns about the lines and the placement. Quite honestly, what we should be doing is having them in a kind of a corridor, you know, a utility corridor at the side, and have the lines run on that.
I think the member is asking an engineering question, really.
But yes, so probably, Mr. Shepherd, go ahead.
Hi, good afternoon now.
Just not sorry to, and I apologize for saying it, but in the interest of time, if the answer could be as brief as possible.
Yes, basically, our legislation doesn't, well, we run lines as much on the verge of the road as possible, right? But our building legislation doesn't apply for pipeline at the side of the road. Drainage, yes. When you're building a house from the corporation, you have the house, the drainage, and then whatever else, the pavement. It doesn't allow for us to run pipelines or any other things at the side of the road.
So can you bring, this is just not a response, can you consider bringing a recommendation to the government that in certain areas, especially Labrie, where it is unimaginable that a pipeline could withstand the vehicles that pass over that road, given the substructure? That could be considered. Also, there was mention, all right, so the last question, there was mention of, I have a comment and a last question. There was mention of the overstaffing of WASA, as you said, 13 staff per 1,000 connections versus nearly half of that in the region. Is it that you're looking at job cuts to bring that closer to our regional partners?
We're not looking at that at this point in time.
All right. And one comment I want to say that so I have no more questions now. Regarding the property seizure, all right, I must say water is to me a right, because without water, I have a young child. Without water, she would die because you need to wash a baby. So if you're saying that water is a right, and without water we die, I think whenever you make pronouncements about property seizures, you should be very clear to state that persons' homes will not be seized for $4,000 owed in terms of water. To me, that is uncaring. And I think it's something that should be corrected. All right? You should correct that going forward. It should not be left there for the public to be feeling that if you owe $4,000, apart from being disconnected after 4 years, WASA will also now take the roof over your head. I think that, to me, is uncaring, and I think that should be and must be corrected going forward.
All right, I'll ask a couple of questions, and then I'll pass on to MP Ayana. One of the questions I want to ask is that I see here that there is a company called AV Drilling among the contractors that are involved here. Is that company involved with WASA in any litigation at this time?
No, they are not involved in any litigation.
They are not involved in any. Was there ever a conflict of interest matter involving AV Drilling?
I am not aware of any conflict of interest matter involving AV Drilling.
Would anyone be able to answer whether they are aware if there was ever a conflict of interest matter involving that company?
The director of legal, the general counsel and corporate secretary has indicated to me that there are no conflict of interest issues involving AV Drilling, of which he's aware.
Okay, so there are no conflict of interest issues, and there is no matter before the court involving AV Drilling.
Correct.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll pass on to MP Webster Roy.
Thank you very much, Chair. I have a few questions, right? You have Appendix 3. That's professional expenses, 2008 to 2013. Okay, so while you're finding it, do we have a fully operational HR and IR unit at WASA? Do we have a fully operational and staffed HR and IR unit at WASA?
Yes, we do.
Okay, I want to understand then what would have caused WASA to engage the services of an individual in 2012 and 2013 at a cost of $725,000 for provision of industrial relations and human resource services?
I can't answer that question. I don't know if the director of human resources can answer that question. I can add, however, that under our tenure, we have discontinued any services being provided by any consultant in that regard.
That is commendable, but I still want to know why that happened.
The consultant was retained to represent WASA at the industrial court for cases we had before the courts.
Mm-hmm. So at that time, we didn't have a fully functioning staff, competent.
The amount of cases we had before the court, it was a bit voluminous in terms of the job demands, so they weren't able to carry out those responsibilities as well.
But I'm seeing here where other things were listed as legal services, so why is this listed differently as provision of HR and IR services? You have where legal services was itemized as legal services, but this one is different. I need to understand why.
The legal services is a bit different. The legal services may be that we seek legal advice, so they may be sub-categorized a bit differently to the IR person who would go before the courts and argue our case on behalf of the HR division.
And I'm not too listen, submit it for me in writing, right? I'm not too satisfied with submitting in writing. I have another question I would like to ask. Mm-hmm. What is the policy governing staff loans?
Staff loans are given to employees.
Okay, I'm seeing here where over a certain period, certain officers would have received advances for study loans and different things like that. What is the policy?
Different types of loans. The study loan is different. We have discontinued those since, but we tend to facilitate the employees' development by giving them loans to pursue studies in areas that are related to their job or their career path as determined by the authority. So that's the study loan, and we would have other loans like the advances, right? Those are for emergency situations. We may allow those type of loans to staff that are in need, and they pay it back after a month or so.
Okay, I understand what you're saying, but then how do you justify an officer receiving a study loan and then during that same period, the same officer getting an advance on a study loan? Because you explain an advance for exigencies, right?
No, not. It's two different types of loan, you know. Study loans is not necessarily the same person the loan goes to, you know.
I'm seeing where an individual would have received a study loan and an advance on a study loan. That's what's listed here on page.
An advance.
This is the number. It doesn't have numbers on the pages. Sorry, but it's on the professional expenses appendix 3.
But they're for two different purposes. One is for personal development to help the organization as well in terms of their skills and educational capabilities. The advance is for emergency situation, illness, death.
I understand what you're saying, but there's a particular individual who would have been, they received a study loan and another line item with the same name saying advance on study loan. So that's what I'm trying to understand.
We'll provide a written response to that. We'll have to investigate that.
Okay, my final set of questions, right? Mr. Chair, during your opening statement, you noted that capacity building and process engineering are two priority areas. My first question, how much expenditure would have been used in the last fiscal period towards capacity building and re-engineering? That's question 1. Question 2, what initiatives were undertaken and what were the outcomes? And the final question, I'll give you the final question after because I know it's a bit much.
I don't have those figures available at this point in time. I don't know if the Director of Finance has that information. I don't have it.
You don't have the figure about what was done in terms of the capacity building and process re-engineering?
Staff have undergone some training in certain areas to try and improve them and make them more equipped to carry out their functions. I don't have the exact specifics of the particular training that was done, but I can also provide that information to you.
What areas you have identified for priority for staff training and development?
Well, customer service is a major area that we are actually focusing on, and the staff have undergone training in that regard. And I don't recall the other areas I'm speaking to right now.
The last one, this administration is pushing public sector innovation. Could you tell me what WASA is doing to create an environment that enables innovation?
I don't know if anybody else could help me with that answer. I don't have the answer to that question.
If you want, you can provide it in writing, but that's one thing I want you to consider because
one of the things actually it's just come back to me. One of the things that we're actually looking at is the issue of bottled water.
The issue of
bottled water, something that we're looking at internally. We're still in the planning phases. We're thinking about it. We haven't made a decision on it as yet, but that's one area that we're looking at.
Bottled water.
Yeah.
Why bottled water?
It's a vibrant market right now, but it's in the exploratory stage. We're just looking at it. We haven't made a decision on it one way or the next.
Have you all considered anything along process innovation? How could you improve certain processes within WASA to ensure that the internal and external customers are better served?
Yes, we are actively trying to deal with issues with respect to even payment online. The WhatsApp that we're going to, in the next few weeks, we'll put on stream, where we'll have customers who call in with their challenges with leak, or they have probably customers could pay their bills online. So those are some of the innovation that we intend to bring with respect to our customers, to bring a little softer arrangement with respect to the movement of persons to pay bills and to deal with issues in the organization.
Okay, thank you.
Senator Ramkisoon, you have the one question you want to ask? Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one final question. And it could be answered by either Mr. Thomas, Chairman, or Dr. Burris, the CEO. It's related to the financial statements, and this is on page 26 of the issue paper. Now, we have been asking a lot of questions on 2012, 2013 finances. We got the tables. That is what is before us. Now, please note, you only finished this on the 24th of March, 2017, which is not in conformance to the Exchequer Act, which is every 6 months. Now, I do hope we improve from the management side of it. Now, seeing that it has been highlighted here that there's unaudited information in respect to the year 30th, ended 30th September 2013, was first presented to the auditors in the month of June 2016. So that is why we're discussing figures so backdated. And we are seeing here that's $4 billion of unaudited expenses for property, plant, and equipment. Would you like to share with this committee what is that about?
I think that's a question. I'll ask the Director of Finance to answer that question. I'm not capable of answering the question.
Okay, so property, plant, and equipment would be a line under fixed assets on your balance sheet. What that represents in this column is that we're saying, as of right now, the unaudited financial balance for the figures was 4.9 billion, and after it was being audited and the audited adjustments were brought into the books, it went up to 5 billion.
So how many unaudited assets do we have right now? And what does that mean? And what does that mean?
Okay, so what it means is based on the management accounts, we would have presented information that came up to 4.9 billion based on the records. When the internal auditors, they come and they do their substantive testing, they would have found areas where they may have thought where the property, plant, and equipment was understated. And they would have provided evidence for us to make that an adjustment. We would have agreed with what they would have said, and the adjustment would have been passed. So it is now, the figure would have changed from the unaudited amount to the agreed audited amount. And this would have occurred in 2013, and we are streamlining processes to ensure that the adjustments are not as large going forward.
So what is our 2017, 2018 unaudited property, plant, and equipment?
I can provide an answer in writing just because I did not work with our 2017 accounts, but I can provide that information. That's at least.
We're going to have to close up now. I want to thank you for answering our questions and for engaging us for the past couple of hours, and I want to thank all members on the team here of the Public Accounts Committee for their contributions, their questions, and their pursuit of issues in the public interest. In closing, I want to say that the main business of a central authority charged with the business of water production and distribution on behalf of the state to the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago is to make sure that they can provide a supply of water to every citizen in their homes, every production entity in the country, that is to say businesses, etc., on a 7-day-a-week, 24-hour-a-day basis. And to do that well, to do that efficiently, and to make sure that they anticipate needs with a growing population or a growing GDP or the establishment of settlements in areas not now served by the entity. And I think that that is the first order of business. And WASA, it seems to me, has to understand that that is its main business. And that is what it must get right before anything else. I don't feel any sense of assurance that WASA has a plan to wean itself off the public purse. You may have little things that you might want to do, and you are literally waiting on your proposal to the RIC to raise rates. And we got the impression that clearly that is one of the things that you will seek to do. We don't know by how much. But other than that, I don't think the committee got any other assurances of how you are going to make this institution sustainable. I think many of us might have been flustered sometimes by the uncertainty of the response from the board on some of the questions that we asked. And it was questions asked based on documentation that you yourself had prepared. And this kind of having a handle on the situation in WASA, which is such an essential service, which is water, is important to us, to the entire country, and we're very, very concerned about that. Now, we did not ask any questions of the ministry, and you said that some of the issues that you were concerned with was customer service, debt management, issues like that. But one of the issues was corporate governance. And I quite frankly think that we may have to ask WASA to come back at some point in the near future to continue to ask some questions on these matters. And certainly the governance issue is one of the things that we want to interrogate a little bit, which is what is the relationship between the minister, the permanent secretary, and the governance structure within the ministry, the board which governs WASA, and the management, and how does this work in terms of public policy for the winning and distribution of water and the efficient allocation of water resources for distribution across the country, and for ensuring that every citizen is served with this essential service and this essential commodity. I think this is something that warrants some attention, and we will see whether we can make the time to do this again. Meanwhile, we might send some questions to you in writing, which really will be derived out of this particular session. And some of the answers that you gave, some of the things that you promised to send, and I urge you again to make sure you keep your promises to us within a reasonable time. And we will send you some questions perhaps before we ask you again to come before the committee. But I want to thank you very much for your cooperation, for your contribution, and sharing with us your knowledge of what is happening in WASA. And I want to thank the members of the ministry, led by the permanent secretary acting, and the members of the board and the management who are here from WASA. And I sincerely want to thank the members of the press who stayed through the end to cover this particular PAC meeting. Thank you very, very much.